Hey, Blondeguygamer here with a review of something that's a little different, and that's the Game Boy camera. Now, like the name suggests, this is a camera for the Game Boy, made by Game Freak. Yeah, the same developers as Pokemon. Back in the day, I remember reading about this in Nintendo Power and thinking, whoa, you can take pictures on your Game Boy now? Cool! I know that seems silly these days, when cameras are in cell phones and, ironically, the Nintendo DSi. But back then, it's something we never seen before. Hell, the Game Boy camera was even in the 1999 Guinness Book of World Records for smallest functional camera. So I got said record-breaking device, and I remember being pretty amused by it. So here I am, 12 years later, going in-depth into this to see how well the camera, and my nostalgia, has held up over the years. Before starting up the device, let's just go over the actual camera quickly. The camera has a swivel to it, and you can change the direction of the camera in two positions. Ahead for taking pictures in front of you, or forwards to take a picture of yourself. Because of the design, I can't really use my Game Boy player unless you want nothing but pictures on my ceiling. Fortunately, I have a Super Game Boy, and it's worth noting that the Game Boy camera has its own unique border when you play it on the Super Game Boy, since certain Game Boy games have exclusive borders when you play them on it. Alright, as soon as we start, we are greeted by a guy dancing in a Mario suit. Right away you'll notice that this game, if you could call it one, is a little odd. At the menu there's Shoot, View, and Play. Well, let's start with Shoot and take some pictures. Did this turn into an RPG menu all of a sudden? What's up with that guy? Why does he have hair similar to mine? Well, we have several options to choose from, including Run? Sure, why not? Okay, let's not pick that. Let's see this camera in action! Yeah, this hasn't aged very well. But this was impressive back in the day, and given the limitations for the Game Boy, it's a little forgiving. But still, we've come a long way in camera technology, haven't we? The options while the camera's running are pretty limited, but you can adjust the brightness and contrast. Right, anyway, so we can take basic pictures in this mode, and can save up to 30 of them. So after that, we can mess around with some different options. There's an item menu with some random guy. I am the man! Yeah, sure you are. Here you can use a self-timer and time-lapse for taking pictures at time intervals. Unless you want to take a picture of yourself at a distance or take pictures over a period of time for a time-lapse, it's not that useful. At the magic selection, we can select tricked lenses, which are pretty amusing, but we've seen these kind of effects before. Montages, which is basically combining different portions of pictures into one. Panoramas, which, unless you have a flat surface or a Super Game Boy, will look like a fault zone dropped in the middle of where you took it. Then there's the ability to take 4 different face shots for a game face. What will these be used for? You'll find out soon enough. Lastly, we can view our pictures we've taken, but there are other ways to view your photos. If you go to View on the main menu, you can select between Album and Show. And no, I don't know what's up with that face. Album is the same thing as viewing photos in the Shoot menu, but in Show, you can have a slideshow for all your pictures, and then there's animation. Ah! Kill it! Kill it with fire! Yeah, we need to make animation first. In order to do so, you press Select at the main menu to access even more options. At the Edit option, you can select Animation and Album, but Album is just selecting photos you want to delete. In the animation, you select between your photos and place them on a reel to make your own little animation movie. The last thing in the Show menu is Hotspots. If you go to the special menu, the Hotspots let you place these little face things on certain parts of your photos, and select another picture, a transition effect, and a sound. Afterwards, you go back to the hotspots in the Show menu, select the photo, and click the spots to transition to another photo with a little sound cue. Yeah, that was remarkably pointless. There's also Compose, which is simply fusing different photos together. The Dual option lets you draw and place random images on your pictures. Although it is a bit limited compared to, say, Mario Paint, but it is basically dueling on people and things, and what kid doesn't like that? Although the D-pad is no mouse, as drawing lines and coloring can be a pain unless you take your time. The last option is the print option. Here we can connect with another Game Boy with a camera, or print your pictures with the Game Boy printer. So while I don't have another Game Boy camera, I do have a Game Boy printer.
Yeah, remember this thing? It was pretty much a short-lived gimmick from the start. This allows you to print postage stamp-sized prints of your photos. But there's only one slight problem with it. It requires 6 AA batteries. One sec.
Okay, now for the link cable. Ah, crap! All I have is the Game Boy Advance one, and that won't work with these connectors. I do remember having the correct cable, but I apparently lost it.
Well, no big loss anyway. All this does is let you print off tiny-ass dotted pictures of the photos you took, which are low quality to begin with anyway. So you're not really missing much there. Plus, I think I threw out all my old prints of the photos I did have, but those are probably not worth looking at anyway.
Although, it's worth noting that the Game Boy printer also lets you print things from other Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, like Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, Link's Awakening DX, some of the Pokemon games, and Perfect Dark.
So yeah, the printer was even more of a gimmick than the actual camera. It's like these two were made for the perfect gimmick bundle pack. And that's about it for the Game Boy printer that I can show off. Sorry if I couldn't show it in action.
I just remembered something. If you don't want to select every edit option separately, you can access them by pressing select on the photo you view if you want to do more than one thing on your photos. Alright, the final selection in the main menu is Play. This lets you play a bunch of minigames. When you begin, you actually start off in Space Fever 2, a sequel to a Space Invaders knockoff by Nintendo. Here you shoot at the ships to select your game. Let's start with the B ship.
Ball. You son of a bitch!
Inside joke aside, this is really just Game & Watch Ball, only you can play with the game face. So yeah, that's pretty much it. If we shoot the D ship, we play DJ, a music creator of sorts that lets you compose short 8-bit music loops. It's a pretty nice novelty, and there's a good amount of options, but it gets tiresome pretty quickly. The last minigame is Run Run Run. It's a short racing game in which you mash the A button to run, and up on the D-pad to jump over hurdles. If you win, you have to mash the A button like hell to raise your victory flag. For whatever reason. Oh, and you actually need to play Space Fever 2 and score over 2,000 points to unlock this minigame. To play Space Fever 2, just don't shoot any of the minigame ships, and away you go. It's a pretty simple shoot 'em up. You can only move left and right, and fire alternating single and double shots one at a time. You fight 3 waves of 3 different enemy types each, and then a boss. Now this game doesn't ever end, as you'll fight the same 3 bosses over and over.
The third boss is determined by the game face, and... Oh, you mother... You piece of shit, you think you can just show up randomly and think you're funny just for the sake of showing up randomly? That's not funny! That's not funny! Yeah! Eat it, you low-quality, retarded-looking piece of crap! I think I have self-image issues.
One last thing we can check out is the records menu. By pressing start, you go into space, and you can look at your information, records, and the game credits. Sure, let's end this by viewing the credits. Okay, we have a face and the ending to that Sheriff game from WarioWare, then an iPod commercial prototype. Alright, enough of that. Yeah. Well, that covers just about everything for the Game Boy camera. The camera graphics are very dated, but still passable, I suppose, given the Game Boy's hardware capabilities. The in-game graphics are nice enough, but it just seems to go with random as its main theme. I mean, you have random characters, random menu screens, random people, a random floating king, a random chicken, random minigames, random Space Fever 2 bosses. There really is no other way to explain these things other than randomness. Yet it makes this strangely charming in its own way, so I guess I can't argue. The music is pretty interesting too. I hate to keep using this word again, but it's a pretty random assortment of 8-bit music. But it's appropriate for the situations, and at times, pretty catchy.
Overall, I still kind of like this. I know it's gimmicky, and it really is nothing more than a novelty item. But it has that randomness charm to it that actually associates quite well with the art of taking random pictures. It really is quite a fascinating piece of Game Boy technology to have in your gaming collection. This is the Blondeguygamer. Thank you for watching my review.
That's nice. Now I can make it into a smoothie. A very disgusting Scottish smoothie.